Thank you so much. I think the time is very short, and I was so asked to cut down 3 minutes. Um, from the topics we heard from the morning, this is slightly different, where the active learning part is going to include this particular component called metacognition. So this is one of the buzzwords in environment, education in general. So in the next 20 minutes, I will be just going through these few titles at the top, which is basically just briefing on what metacognition is. What students assumes about the learning. This is my problem statement for this talk, because of the time that we can cut short this. And students, because of the assumption, they most of the time have very ineffective study strategies. So we will see few of them very quickly. What activities promotes metacognition? I mean, in terms of the, I call it general activities, and one component is the active learning. And what prompts plays, what is the role of prompts in all active learning? This is what is the end of the presentation. So metacognition, I'll just straight away jump into the concept of it. The educators, they divide the dimension of knowledge into four: the concrete, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. Institutions are, the syllabuses are mostly focused on building the first three. So we want to first build the foundation on what students are studying in their major. Then through the process, and we teach students in very different ways how to connect this knowledge. So this is where the students, when they speak the language of the subject they learn, it takes time. But in our context, especially MSc thesis examination, PhD thesis examination is where this is going to be expressed. I think the experience from the department I am coming from, students have a problem in constructing the things what they already know. Basically, this is the domain of conceptual knowledge. Then all the subjects have something called procedural knowledge, which we teach them through lab and all kind of activities what we do. But what the graduate attributes are targeting, if you look at the graduate attributes doesn't talk about the major. It talks about something very generic and something which is, we don't address them inside the class. And we assume that this is going to happen at the end of the graduation. So this basically falls to the domain of what we call as metacognitive expression. And these are what basically is a conditional knowledge. This is where we miss out on students in terms of understanding how they express. For example, students coming late to the class. We don't know, we have no strategies how to deal with this situation. So these are the domains which basically falls into students' metacognition, which is basically in terms of technical context, application of what they learn in a particular real world situation is also needs some metacognitive thinking. So it is a conditional strategic knowledge and also a self-generated knowledge. The problem is that we cannot explicitly teach them, but educators comes with strategies how we can teach metacognitive knowledge. So to put the things into context, our students are most of the time now, it's very good in answering content related questions. The moment we ask them questions like, how did you learn? They normally struggle. So that is basically the metacognition comes from. So the metacognition is about thinking about learning. There's about learning strategies, so on and so forth. So just quickly cut down this background information. So metacognition is a very broader thing in terms of, one is the knowledge and the regulation. So this is where we are struggling with the second part. The student self-regulation is very difficult to manage because most of us believe that that is not our job. Our job is to teach the content. So the second part is where is very critical things comes in, and which involves planning, monitoring, and evaluation of the students' their own learning. So this is a very important thing. I normally you maybe in SQ context, if you ask the student for the first 4 weeks, what are they doing? If you just ask a question, they don't do anything, most of them. Everything started happening when the midterm or some test comes. So they need a kind of some monitoring happens externally. The first 3 weeks or most of the time they just attend the class, go back to the room, they do repeat the same thing, then suddenly they started preparing and planning, and without planning things are not going to move out. And monitoring their own learning, for example, where do they need to improve? I mean that's what the feedback comes in. So I don't know, the feedback system is not common throughout SQ. It depends on the nature of the subject and the culture in a particular college and the department. So this is where the students' feedback is necessary to monitor students' learning, and definitely they should be able to evaluate themselves how they have to proceed with in the next set of learning. So what students assume about their learning, and these are some of the theoretical underpinnings. Because of the time, I was trying to go a little bit ahead, and these are some of the major issues with students across the world. And when it comes to these assumptions students make, they have a very shallow study strategies, or what you call this. See, I think these are some of the major things students use, which has been found in literature. For example, highlighting when they are, this is very common in students in biology. So if they have one paper and they have 8 colors, and what are you highlighting? So everything becomes important, and the brain does not take the memory of all the 8 codes, and there's a problem of highlighting. And rereading is a very common practice. Self-explanation, and this is also a very common thing. And these are some of the criterias. Learning study strategies. The students have absolutely, most of them, they have no idea about how effective these things are. So these are some of the things found in the literature. I'll just open it up, and I think this is a very good thing to teach students in every course, just to ask them to map them what they know about these strategies. So these are the literature evidence-based thing. What is the effectiveness? I'm just opening it one by one. I think you can also have your own judgment. What is the effectiveness of in terms of low, medium, and high? So highlighting is very kind of a very less effective strategy in terms of recalling. Especially for comprehension, so on and so forth. Rereading, same. Self-explanation is a kind of a moderate. Practice testing, which is very powerful. Now, if you ask our students, what are you doing, then they will go back to the previous question papers, which is very good, by the way. The thing is that the problem is that without preparing the background, they rely on these strategies of looking into the previous semester question papers. That is definitely is not going to be very helpful. So this is only useful once the foundational preparation is done. And summarization, again, evidence-based research found that this is very less effective. Elaborative integration, imagery, low. And the next 2 thing is very proven one, as people in education, they know this, that distributed practice. Studying a particular thing in a very different time periods, during the day, during the hours, this is proven to be a very effective strategy. But students normally want to have this tendency of taking the backpack. So one by one. Let me finish one, then I move to the next subject. So these are very simple thing that we can tell our students to try and change. Interleaved practice, which is again switching between the two different tasks, different subject. For example, next week 2 exams are coming, then you have to be switching between these two subjects. And even if you are studying one subject, you are moving between two different units of the same subject. So these are the examples of interleaved practices and acronyms building up some things, and these are found to be very less effective. So what activities promote metacognition inside the class? These are as you are aware of, there are 4 ways we can intervene. We can make them write, but you can tell that, okay, they are already taking notes. What are you asking them to write again? But in fact, a majority of them, they don't take notes. They are not taking notes. And so we provide them with resource material for them to have a look before they come into the class. But they open the same slide inside the class and started writing on top of the slides. So definitely they are not constructing any original statements. And talking and listening, of course, we have a problem making them talk inside the class. And listening, what is this activity called listening? Already they are listening, but there are certain strategies in active learning. We can make students listen properly. So one very good technique is we can compile both. When we ask students to ask questions and to answer, we can use the same strategy to ask other students to paraphrase it. So this is what is basically in large classroom sizes. Only few students sitting at the in the front desk, they talk, and the rest of them, they have no idea. They say that this is not my, anyway, the instructor is not going to come to me. So from the beginning, the strategy should be like, all right, I want all of you to talk in the class, right? But you don't need to have, if you have a problem of original contribution, you are going to listen to what your peers are answering, then you should be able to paraphrase it. That's a very simple technique. Then you go through over a semester, you make all of them talk in the class. So reading. So before coming to the class, for example, in flipped classroom, it's a very common practice. But how we are going to make them read inside the class. And the very key part of the whole active learning is we have to make students reflect in the class. This is what is the thing that majority of the instructors, they cite the reason of time inside the class, and they say that, oh, I did my activity, but what is the meaning of that activity is most of the time is submerged. So that's where this reflection and feedback comes. So John Dewey, from the famous quote, we learn more from reflecting on our experience than from actual experience themselves. This is what is the key part of that leads students to improve their metacognition. Where we can intervene in very different stages. Prior to lesson, for example, in flipped classroom, and there are many activities. And during lesson is where actually the currently SQ is focusing on. Then after the lesson, that's most of the time we don't do this to follow them after the lesson. And finally, in the overall course. So these are the areas of intervention as far as active learning is concerned. These are some of the proven strategies, and this morning people have already talked about few of these strategies. So we are not going to spend time on this, but my whole point is on the prompt. So at the end, whatever the active learning we do in the class, we have to make them reflect one way or the other, either inside the class, in situ, or outside the class. So this is something where we have to spend some time, and these are some of the very good questions that we can give the students. For example, I would be using 1 or 2 questions per semester, then trying a different question with the same course with a different batch in a different semester as a progression of improving their reflection, right? It's a very, very simple thing. For example, we have opportunity to observe classes. Most of the instructors, they do very good active learning strategies. The problem is that it ends abruptly without any student reflection. And the majority of the students like, all right, this instructor has certain strategy, I like it, but only few students are participating, I don't have opportunity to participate. So it ends up like not benefiting the whole classroom, right? So basically these reflection activities, of course it takes time, but this is what the chances of making students to think on their own learning. So these are some of the examples. For example, a very simple question is like, a student is answering, then you ask the other students to what do you think about that answer. So this leads to process-based reflection, and this reflection is what definitely is going to help students to improve our students' metacognition. I think these are some of the very good examples. Because of the time, I will be, it's the last two slides. The one is like post-test analysis. This is a very important thing which we can do outside the class. Not in every time, I mean once in a while, at least one time in a midterm test or a final test. This is doable at least in a small classroom environment. And finally, I mean, we can also ask questions, very simple questions like after they finish the exam, just make them to align different types of questions, how they performed under the different Bloom's cognitive process of learning. So this is basically, I think majority of our departments exam papers are moderated, and all the exam papers we use either Bloom's taxonomy or some kind of a learning model. So in order to take this to the students, then definitely we have to make them align. If they are able to align, then they know where they are learning their content at what level. With that, I will stop. And if you have any questions, we can discuss in the subsequent time period. Thank you so much.
Thank you.